You dare to speak, human, in the presence of your betters.
I dare more than that. I dare to hope.
Jack Morrison wasn't remarkable. Amidst the glittering halls and vibrant alien life of Diplomatic world, he was a small, dark speck. An ordinary man in a plain black suit, neat brown hair, and expressionless face. Perhaps the towering, deep purple Theronians of the Theronian Alliance, with their proud stature and millennia of conquest, didn't spare him glance. Or the Cathar Collective, with their chitinous orange shells and ceaselessly working limbs, dismissed him as an insignificant data point. Even Envoy Lyra of the Xylosian Sovereignty, with her ruby-red skin and captivating, lethal beauty, offered only a fleeting look, as if at a curious, exotic pet. Yet, in Jack's calm eyes, there was no fear, no anxiety. Only a weight. He'd faced far worse, right on his own planet. He'd seen wars ignite over trivialities, cities turn to ash overnight, and life resurface from the rubble. What the Galactic Council called stability or cosmic order were merely empty words to a species born from chaos. They had prepared a proposal to limit humanity, to cage mankind within the meager confines of their solar system. A thin smile, cold as steel, touched Jack's lips. They didn't understand. They didn't understand who they were talking to at all. And that was about to change. If this story has piqued your curiosity and you're ready to hear more epic tales of humanity defying the cosmos, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the Alien Whispers channel for more incredible narratives, leave a comment below with your thoughts, and share it with fellow fans of humanity's strength. The comet transporter settled onto a designated landing pad with a subtle tremor, its thrusters sighing as they powered down. Jack Morrison, his plain black suit a stark contrast to the alien architecture, stepped out into the controlled atmosphere of Diplomatic world. He adjusted the cuff of his jacket, his gaze sweeping across the vast expanse of the landing zone. Behind him, Lieutenant Kate Brooks secured a simple, nondescript briefcase and a slim datapad. They looked like any other diplomatic team, anonymous representatives from a minor world trying to establish a foothold in the sprawling galactic community. Jack wasn't imposing. His brown hair was neatly combed, his face unremarkable, devoid of any discernible emotion. He moved with a quiet, efficient grace. Other beings, vastly different in form and stature, passed by without a second glance. To them, he was merely another delegate from a species barely deemed spacefaring. Kate stayed close, her eyes sharp, absorbing every detail of their surroundings. The air here was crisp, tinged with a faint, metallic scent. Above them, towering spires of polished synthstone and interwoven bioluminescent filaments pierced the sky, forming the monumental skyline of the primary diplomatic enclave. This sector was dominated by structures reflecting the architectural styles of the dominant species. First time seeing this many species on one planet? Jack asked, his voice a low, even tone. Kate nodded, her focus still on a group of slender, red-skinned Xylosians gliding past. It's overwhelming, sir, and they don't seem particularly receptive. Jack's lips barely curved. Receptive? Rarely, Lieutenant. They see us as children playing with their ancient toys. They proceeded into the grand central concourse, a bustling hub where representatives from the 12 council species mingled, though loosely. The Theronians were immediately noticeable. Their powerful frames, draped in ceremonial purple robes, moved with an almost arrogant confidence. Their leader, Commander Valerius, a formidable figure with deep-set eyes, watched Jack's approach, his expression a mask of barely concealed disdain. The Cathar Collective members were distinct. Their orange, chitinous exoskeletons clicked softly as multiple limbs meticulously manipulated datapads. Their envoy Cyrax, allowed a series of buzzing clicks as he observed the humans. The sound, sharp and staccato, was clearly not a greeting. Other species, their forms ranging from serpentine to vaguely mammalian, filled the space. All shared one commonality, a dismissive gaze reserved for humanity. Ambassador Morrison, a modulated voice boomed from unseen speakers embedded in the architecture, Report to Conference Hall 7 for preliminary discussions. Jack adjusted his tie, picking up his simple leather portfolio. Time to work, Kate. Conference. The next morning brought formal negotiations in the main council chambers. The room was enormous, a circular amphitheater of polished dark synth stone and shimmering light panels, designed to dwarf any single species within its ancient embrace. Each delegation had its own tiered section, subtly adapted with environmental controls. The human section was small, 2 simple chairs in a discreet alcove. Jack entered wearing the same plain black suit, his leather portfolio in hand, his calm pace unwavering. Kate followed, her eyes meticulously scanning the chamber. Representatives from all 12 species filled their sections, a wall of alien faces, all focused on the 2 humans. Council Elder Vexer of the Theronian Alliance stood at the central platform. His 8-foot frame was imposing, even among the other large species present. His purple skin gleamed under the chamber lights, and his ceremonial robes displayed more intricate metals than Kate could count. The council recognizes the human delegation, Vexer announced, his deep voice echoing. Ambassador Morrison, you have reviewed our proposal. What is humanity's response? Jack stood slowly and walked to the speaker's platform in the center. The chamber fell silent save for the soft hum of various life support systems. Every alien eye fixed on the unremarkable human in his simple suit. The council's proposal shows careful thought, Jack began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. However, humanity must respectfully decline the offered terms. A ripple of sound moved through the assembled aliens. Some chittered, others growled, a few made high-pitched whistles. None of the sounds seemed friendly. Envoy Cyrax rose from the Cthar section, his multiple orange arms moving rapidly across his datapad. Decline? You decline. His buzzing voice grew louder. Your species has been spacefaring for less than 50 years. You have colonies on a handful of dust-ridden rocks in your tiny system. What gives you the right to decline anything? Jack made a note in his portfolio. Every species has the right to self-determination. We're not asking for special treatment, merely fair treatment. Commander Valerius let out a sound like grinding metal. Fair treatment, young species, is something you seem to misunderstand. The galaxy has an order, a balance. Species find their place in that order based on their capabilities and wisdom. Your species has shown neither. More sounds of agreement came from around the chamber. Kate noticed her hands were clenched into fists and forced herself to relax. Jack seemed completely unaffected by the hostility. Perhaps, Jack said calmly, we could discuss what fair terms might look like. Humanity is willing to respect territorial boundaries and participate in galactic commerce regulations. We're not seeking conflict. Not seeking conflict? Envoy Lyra from the Xylosian Sovereignty stood up, her red scales seeming to glow. Your species' entire history is conflict. You fight wars over resources, territory, ideas, even skin color. Your own planet still bears scars from your nuclear weapons. And now you want to bring that violence to the galaxy. Exactly, added a reptilian-looking representative from a neighboring section. We've seen this pattern before. Young species always promise peace while building weapons. Jack nodded thoughtfully. You studied our history. That's wise. But perhaps you haven't studied it completely. Cyrax's arms moved faster across his datapad. We know enough. Constant warfare, environmental destruction, social inequality. Your species is barely civilized by galactic standards. The chamber erupted in various alien sounds of agreement. Kate could feel the hostility like heat from a fire. Every species present seemed united in their contempt for humanity. The Council's offer is generous, Commander Valerius said, his voice cutting through the noise. Confinement to your system with regular inspections, trade restrictions to prevent dangerous technology development. It's more than most primitive species receive. And if we refuse? Jack asked quietly. The chamber grew silent again. Vexer stepped forward on the platform, his massive frame casting a shadow over Jack. If you refuse, Vexer said slowly, then humanity will learn why the galactic order exists. There are consequences for species that don't know their place. Consequences? Repeated another representative. Economic sanctions, technology embargoes, quarantine enforcement, or more direct methods, Commander Valerius added with what might have been a grim smile. Young species often require education. Jack closed his portfolio and looked around the chamber. His face showed no fear, no anger, no emotion at all. Kate had seen that expression before during their military service together. It usually preceded something memorable. "I see," Jack said. "So humanity's choices are submission or punishment." "Finally, he understands," Cyrax buzzed happily. "Your species will learn to appreciate the Council's wisdom in time. Learn your limitations," added the Xylosian envoy. "Accept your place. Like children learning not to play with fire," another voice called out. The chamber filled with alien laughter again. The sound echoed off the walls, creating a symphony of contempt. Jack stood in the center of it all, perfectly still. "Children playing with fire," Jack repeated softly. His voice was barely audible, but somehow it carried through the chamber. The laughter began to fade. "Barely evolved primates," Cyrax continued, apparently not noticing the change in atmosphere. "Playing with technology they don't understand, thinking they can negotiate with civilizations that ruled the stars before their son was born." The chamber erupted in fresh laughter. But Kate noticed something the aliens didn't. Jack's hands weren't shaking. They weren't clenched. They were perfectly still, like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. Jack opened his portfolio again and made a single careful entry. When he looked up, his eyes had changed. They were still calm, but there was something else there now. Something that made Kate step back instinctively. "Gentlemen," Jack said quietly, his voice cutting through the laughter like a blade through silk, "I believe there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about who you're speaking to." The laughter died completely for the first time since the negotiations began. The chamber was absolutely silent. The silence in the chamber stretched for several long seconds. Jack stood at the center platform, his hands resting calmly at his sides. The assembled alien representatives stared at him, trying to grasp the sudden shift in the room's atmosphere. Commander Valerius was the first to break the stillness, his purple skin darkening with what Kate recognized as raw anger. "Misunderstanding," he growled, his voice a low rumble. "The only misunderstanding here is your species' delusional belief that you possess any power in this situation." Jack tilted his head slightly, as if listening to a distant whisper. "Power is an interesting concept, Commander. May I inquire about your military experience?" The question seemed to catch Valerius off guard. "I have commanded fleets for over 2 centuries. I have conquered 17 star systems for the Theronian Alliance. What does that matter to you, human?" "Impressive," Jack said genuinely. 17 systems. How many species did you fight during those conquests?" 6 different species," Valerius replied, his massive chest swelling with pride. "All of them learned to respect Theronian strength." Jack nodded thoughtfully. 6 species over 2 centuries. That's about 1 conflict every 30 years or so. Quite reasonable for galactic expansion. Envoy Cyrax's multiple orange arms moved rapidly across his datapad. "What is your point, human? Are you attempting to waste our time with military history?" "Not at all," Jack replied. "I'm trying to understand the Council's perspective on warfare and conflict resolution. It helps with context." Kate felt her stomach tighten. She recognized the tone in Jack's voice. It was the same tone he'd used during briefings before particularly dangerous missions. Calm, educational, and absolutely terrifying if you knew what it meant. Context for what? Council Elder Vexer demanded from his position on the platform. Jack reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small device that looked like a standard diplomatic communicator. He pressed a button, and a holographic display shimmered into existence above the platform, visible to everyone in the chamber. "This is Earth," Jack said as a blue and green planet appeared in the hologram. "Population, 8 billion humans. We've been a spacefaring species for 47 years, as you mentioned." The aliens watched with bored expressions. They had seen planetary displays before. "This is our military history for the past century," Jack continued. The hologram changed, now displaying a timeline with thousands of small red marks scattered across it. Envoy Cyrax leaned forward in his seat, his chittering ceasing. Those marks represent conflicts, Jack confirmed. Each mark represents a war, a battle, or a significant military engagement. In the past 100 years, humanity has fought in over 14,000 separate conflicts. A murmur ran through the chamber. The number seemed impossibly high. Commander Valerius laughed harshly. Impossible. No species could survive that level of internal warfare. You're right, Jack said calmly. Most species couldn't. But you see, Commander, humanity has a unique approach to conflict resolution. We don't fight one war every 30 years. We fight multiple wars simultaneously, all while maintaining our civilization's growth and development. The hologram zoomed in to show more detail. These red zones represent ongoing conflicts during any given decade. As you can see, humans have been fighting somewhere on our planet continuously for our entire recorded history. Kate watched the alien faces around the chamber. She could see the moment when they began to truly grasp what Jack was showing them. The bored expressions were replaced by something that might have been concern or even apprehension. The resource wars alone involved over 2 billion combatants. Jack continued conversationally. The Australian continental conflict was resolved in 18 hours. The European stabilization campaign lasted 3 years and involved 47 different nations. You're describing a species of psychopaths, Envoy Lyra said, her ruby-red scales seeming to lose some of their luminescence. No, Jack replied. I'm describing a species that has perfected warfare while you were learning diplomacy. Every human conflict taught us something new about strategy, tactics, logistics, and technology. We didn't have the luxury of conquering primitive species one at a time over centuries. We had to learn to fight equals who were just as intelligent, just as motivated, and just as well-equipped as we were. The hologram changed again, showing complex technical specifications that Kate recognized as classified military data. Our current military technology is based on weapons designed to fight other humans. Humans who know all our tactics, understand our psychology, and have access to the same resources we do. Commander Valerius stood up slowly, his posture no longer arrogant. You're trying to intimidate us with stories of primitive warfare. Jack's expression didn't change. Commander, with respect, you've conquered 6 species over 2 centuries, using superior technology in numbers. Humanity has been fighting itself with equal technology in numbers for millennia. Which do you think produces better soldiers? The chamber fell silent again. Kate could see alien representatives exchanging glances, their earlier confidence beginning to waver. Furthermore, Jack continued, his voice calm, you seem to be under the impression that I'm a diplomat in the traditional sense. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thin folder. My credentials, for those interested in details. Envoy Cyrax's multiple orange arms stopped moving across his datapad, frozen mid-gesture. What are you saying, human? Jack opened the folder and read calmly, his voice echoing slightly in the stunned silence. Colonel Jack Morrison, Human Special Operations Command, veteran of the Resource Wars, Australian Continental Conflict, and European Stabilization Campaign. Confirmed actions in 17 major battles and 43 covert operations. The silence in the chamber was now absolute. Even the environmental systems seemed to have quieted their subtle hum. You see, gentlemen, Jack said, closing the folder with a soft snap. Humanity doesn't send politicians to meet unknown alien species. We send our warriors, the ones who survived, learning how to fight the most dangerous opponents in the galaxy. Commander Valerius's voice was quieter when he spoke again, a tremor in his tone. What opponents? Jack smiled for the second time since arriving on Diplomatic World. This smile was even less warm than the first. Other humans, Commander. We send our killers to meet you because we spent thousands of years learning to kill the most dangerous predators we know, ourselves. Valerius's face twisted with rage. The revelation that humanity's diplomat was actually a seasoned warrior shattered his confidence, and now raw fury took its place. His purple skin darkened to almost black as he stood to his full 8-foot height. "You dare bring a military officer to a diplomatic meeting?" he roared, his voice shaking the very air. "You dare threaten the council with your primitive war stories?" Jack remained perfectly calm at the center platform. "I haven't threatened anyone, Commander. I've simply corrected some misunderstandings about my species." "Lies and deception." Envoy Cyrax buzzed angrily, his multiple arms moving frantically across his datapads. "This is exactly the kind of behavior we expected from your violent species." Council Elder Vexer stepped forward on the main platform. "Security," he commanded, his voice strained. "Escort the human delegation from the planet. They have violated diplomatic protocols." Kate tensed beside Jack. She had seen this situation before during their military service. The moment when negotiations failed and someone decided to use force instead of words. Her hand moved instinctively toward her diplomatic case. Two massive Theronian guards entered the chamber. They wore full combat armor and carried energy weapons that could drop most species with a single shot. They moved with the confident swagger of soldiers who had never lost a fight. "You will come with us," one guard announced, his voice amplified by his helmet's speakers. "Do not resist." Jack turned to face the approaching guards. He straightened his tie with one hand while closing his portfolio with the other. The movement was casual, almost lazy. "Kate," he said quietly, not taking his eyes off the guards. "Protocol 7. Kate's hands moved to her diplomatic case. To the watching aliens, it looked like she was simply preparing to leave. But Kate's fingers found specific buttons on the case's handle. Buttons that weren't part of any normal diplomatic equipment. The first guard reached for Jack's shoulder. "Come quietly, and you will not be harmed." Jack turned slightly, just enough to avoid the guard's reaching hand. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that." What happened next took less than 3 seconds, but Kate saw every detail clearly. Jack's right hand came up and struck the guard's wrist with surgical precision. The guard's weapon fell from suddenly nerveless fingers. Jack's left hand moved to the guard's helmet, finding a specific point where the armor joined the neck piece. A quick twist, and the guard collapsed, unconscious but breathing. The second guard was already drawing his weapon. The energy rifle was halfway to firing position when Jack's foot swept the guard's legs. As the armored figure fell, Jack caught the weapon and disabled its power cell in one smooth motion. The entire chamber erupted in chaos. Alien representatives jumped to their feet, some shouting, others activating emergency communicators. Security alarms began wailing throughout the diplomatic enclave. Jack stood between the two unconscious guards, his black suit unruffled. He hadn't even broken a sweat. "Kate," he asked calmly. "Protocol 7 is active," she replied. Her diplomatic case was now open, revealing equipment that definitely wasn't standard embassy gear. Lights blinked on small devices that had been disguised as cultural exchange gifts. The communication array they had installed in the human quarters came online, sending signals throughout the enclave. General Valerius was screaming orders into his communicator. "All security teams to the council chamber. Code red. Hostile contact." But something was wrong with the diplomatic enclave's communication systems. His orders came back as static and broken fragments. Other representatives were having the same problem with their equipment. Jack reached into his jacket and pulled out what had looked like a simple diplomatic identification badge. He pressed a small button on its back, and suddenly the chamber's main display screens came alive with classified council data streams. "Fascinating reading," Jack commented as military deployment schedules, fleet positions, and intelligence reports scrolled past. "You really should improve your network security." Envoy Cyrax stared at the screens in horror, his orange carapace almost vibrating. "Impossible. Those are encrypted files. Access requires highest-level clearance." "Yes," Jack agreed. "It does." "Kate, how are we doing on the upload?" 80% complete," Kate replied, checking her equipment. "All target systems have been mapped and cataloged." The truth was dawning on the assembled aliens. The humans hadn't come to negotiate. They had come to gather intelligence. Every diplomatic courtesy, every cultural exchange, Every piece of standard embassy equipment had been carefully designed to penetrate the Council's most secure systems. "You planned this," Council Elder Vexer said, his voice filled with disbelief. "From the beginning, this was an intelligence operation." Jack nodded. "Of course. Did you think humanity would enter galactic civilization without understanding who we were dealing with? We've been studying you for months." More security teams arrived at the chamber doors, but they couldn't enter. The chamber's security locks had been overridden by Kate's equipment. They could see inside through the transparent walls, but they were trapped outside. "The gifts we brought," Jack continued conversationally, "contain some of our most advanced surveillance technology. We've been mapping this enclave's systems, recording your conversations, and analyzing your military capabilities since we arrived." Commander Valerius's communicator finally connected to his forces. "Full military response," he roared. "Treat the humans as hostile combatants." Jack turned to face him directly. "Commander, I wouldn't recommend that course of action." "And why not, human?" Jack's smile returned, colder than before. "Because right now, every species in the Council is watching this conversation. Your people, his people." He gestured to other representatives. "All of them are seeing their mighty Council helplessly outmaneuvered by two humans with some basic equipment." The chamber screen switched from classified data to external communication feeds. Across the galaxy, news networks were broadcasting live coverage of the incident. The story was spreading faster than the Council could contain it. "Upload complete," Kate announced. "All intelligence packages have been transmitted to Earth Command." Jack straightened his jacket and picked up his portfolio. "Gentlemen, this has been educational, but I believe our business here is concluded." The aliens watched in stunned silence as Jack walked calmly toward the chamber exit. Kate followed, carrying her equipment case as if it contained nothing more dangerous than paperwork. At the door, Jack turned back to address the chamber one final time. "Oh, and Commander, what you witnessed today was a diplomat trying very hard not to hurt anyone. You really don't want to meet our soldiers." 1 week later, Jack Morrison walked through the same grand concourses of Diplomatic World. This time, everything was different. Theronian security guards stepped aside respectfully when they saw him coming. Representatives from various species nodded politely instead of ignoring him. The small human diplomatic section had been expanded and moved to a more central, prominent location within the diplomatic enclave. Kate walked beside him, carrying the same seemingly innocuous briefcase as before. But now, every alien they passed knew exactly what that innocent-looking case could do. Word had spread quickly through galactic civilization about what had transpired in the Council chamber. "The intelligence reports are still coming in," Kate said quietly as they walked, her tone satisfied. "Every major species has been analyzing human military history. Some of them are even requesting formal military cooperation agreements." Jack nodded. "Fear has a way of changing perspectives. How are the negotiations looking?" "Much better than last week," Kate replied with a slight smile. "Amazing how reasonable people become when they understand who they're dealing with." They entered the Council chamber again. The same tiered seats, the same diverse species, but the atmosphere was completely transformed. Where there had been contempt and hostility before, now there was careful respect, almost reverence. The alien representatives watched Jack with the intense attention of prey animals observing a predator. Council Elder Vexer stood at the central platform, but his posture was different. Less commanding, more cautious. "Ambassador Morrison, welcome back to the Council. We trust your week on Earth was productive." "Very productive, thank you," Jack replied as he took his seat. "Humanity has had time to consider the Council's revised proposals." The revised proposals were vastly different from the original demands. Instead of restrictions and quarantine, the new documents offered broad trade partnerships, technology exchanges, and mutual defense agreements. The change had been remarkable and swift. Commander Valerius spoke from his section, his voice noticeably quieter and stripped of its former arrogance. "The Theronian Alliance wishes to formally apologize for the misunderstanding during your previous visit. Our security personnel exceeded their authority." Jack made a note in his portfolio. Apology accepted, Commander. No permanent harm was done. Envoy Cyrax's multiple orange arms moved nervously across his datapad. The Cthar Collective has completed our analysis of human military capabilities. We may have underestimated your species' potential. Underestimated, repeated Envoy Lyra, her ruby-red scales seeming to flush slightly. That's one way to put it. Jack looked around the chamber calmly. Gentlemen, I hope you understand that humanity bore no ill will toward any of your species. We simply needed to ensure that first contact proceeded on equal terms. Equal terms, Vexer said slowly. Yes, we see that now. The truth was that every species in the Council had spent the past week in emergency sessions with their military leaders and intelligence agencies. The data that Jack's team had gathered during their diplomatic mission had been shared with Earth, but Earth had also carefully shared some of it with the galactic community. The message was clear. Humanity knew everything about the Council's military capabilities, and the Council knew almost nothing about humanity's true strength. The territorial restrictions have been removed from all proposals, another representative announced. Humanity is free to expand as you see fit, within reasonable galactic boundaries. The technology sharing agreements have been restructured, added Envoy Cyrax. Instead of restrictions on human development, we're proposing mutual exchanges that benefit all species. Jack nodded approvingly. These changes show wisdom and good faith. Humanity appreciates the Council's flexibility. What he didn't mention was the real reason for the dramatic change in attitude. During the week following Jack's demonstration, intelligence agencies across the galaxy had dug deeper into human history. What they found had terrified them. The resource wars had involved weapons that could crack continents. The Australian continental conflict had ended when humanity developed technology that could reshape weather patterns on a localized scale. The European stabilization campaign had featured military units that could operate for months behind enemy lines with no support. But the most frightening discovery was humanity's capacity for cooperation during crisis. Despite their constant internal conflicts, humans could unite instantly when facing an external threat. Every major war in human history had ended with the losing side being integrated into the winning civilization, making humanity stronger rather than weaker. There is one final matter, Commander Valerius said carefully, interrupting Jack's internal thoughts. The Council would like to invite humanity to participate in our mutual defense protocols. Jack raised an eyebrow. You're inviting us to join your military alliance? Not join, Vexar corrected quickly, his posture shifting to lead. We would like humanity to take a leadership role in galactic security. The offer was unprecedented. A species that had been unknown a week ago was being invited to command the military forces of a dozen ancient civilizations. But the Council had realized something important. If humanity was going to be in the galaxy, it was far better to have them as allies than as enemies. Kate leaned over and whispered something to Jack. He nodded and made another note in his portfolio. Humanity is honored by the offer, Jack said. We'll need to discuss the details with our government, but we're certainly interested in contributing to galactic peace and security. Excellent. The aggressive species that had threatened humanity a week ago were now competing to be humanity's closest allies. Jack and Kate left the chamber together, walking through corridors that had been transformed by a single week of understanding. Aliens who had looked down on humanity now watched them with respect and caution. Mission accomplished? Kate asked as they reached their shuttle. Jack adjusted his tie and looked back at the sprawling diplomatic enclave. Kate, we didn't come here to join their civilization. We came to teach them about ours. The shuttle departed from Diplomatic World, carrying 2 humans who had changed the balance of galactic power without firing a single shot. Behind them, emergency sessions continued on every Council world as species hastily rewrote their policies toward humanity. In the end, the greatest weapon humanity brought to the galaxy wasn't their technology or their military strength. It was their ability to wage both war and peace with equal precision, and the wisdom to know when each was appropriate. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again.